December 13th, 2025. Well, I'm going to get back to a little bit to domestic politics in this video. They've been covering a bunch of different kind of topics, and well, with President Trump's speech in Pennsylvania this week, I think that he's kind of kicking off a response to this ongoing a Democrat offensive. We've been seeing the so-called affordability offensive, and it kind of plays into the the situation of the past few, couple 3 months, I guess, really, since the end of the fiscal year of 2025, and we're actually in fiscal 2026 technically now, as you know, even though we don't have a budget yet exactly. We're under a continuing resolution that lasts to the end of January. So, and of course, things are still in flux given the Democrat Party's opposition to everything Trump. Well, I'm taking a look at some polling data here to see kind of how we're doing. Obviously, Trump has taken a bit of a hit during all this battling, and interesting enough, I have a few other measures, but let's start off with the Trump average and the Real Clear Politics, which has a whole bunch of polls between varying degrees of qualities, I would say, has Trump down 9 points. Okay, and when you look at those numbers, however, he's rebounded a little bit from the low. He's obviously coming off the bottom, and it seems that however, a lot of these polls are dubious. There's 3 polls in them that are all adults polls, which I guess is anybody that's 18 years old, basically. And I'm not even sure they're actually citizens. Nobody said all citizen adults, so that probably includes illegal aliens too, probably. I don't. At any rate, and the average of those, he's down 20 points in that poll. On the other hand, the likely voters polls, where you kind of use likely voter measures of some sort to sort of scan out people that are less likely to vote, perhaps simply by asking them how likely you are to vote in the next election, or perhaps even strengthen it a little bit by saying, did you vote in the last election, if you were eligible, something like that. At any rate, that has him down almost down 4 points. So, which is not too far off from reasonable for a president that's actually doing things in midterm, particularly a Republican, because you're going to always have, for a Republican, not on the campaign trail, they're always going to have a lot of negative Democrat-dominated media that's putting out various things to attack positions. And I can hardly look at the homepage on the MSN homepage. I'm seeing all kinds of snark every time you look at it. So, and then in the middle you have the registered voter polls, and I guess they would then take up the mid range there, probably about typically. I've done a specific, maybe down 10 points on, well, something maybe 8 or 10, something like that. They vary. Some of the best of those were in the low single, like 2 or 3 points down, and others are maybe a little lower than that. Although I think it's those really bad all adult polls that are thrown in there to mix up the average, which I would just kind of throw out to get it reasonable. And Rasmussen, I think, has him down 4, I believe, if I remember from the latest version. So, I don't see that as all. I mean, he needs to have a comeback, and I think he will. If you look at the other thing that's kind of interesting is the so-called the generic poll, which is really most relevant to the election for the House of Representatives. That kind of has the Democrats about up 4 points. As you look at the curve, the Democrats haven't gained during the last, they're still sitting at about 46%. It's the Republicans that have dropped off. So there seems to be a little bit of a lower enthusiasm on the Republican side for whatever reason. And so anyhow, that's what we're looking at now as a snapshot. And of course, that means there's work to be done in order to turn things around. Particularly the key thing going forward at the moment, obviously, for this election is retaining the Senate at the national level. I mean, obviously, there's also a lot of critical state races for governorships and other state office holders, of course. But at the national level, it's holding the Senate is the key. The dream is holding the House, of course. If you like this videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me on Rumble as well if you prefer that site. Now, obviously, I want the Republicans to win here. I'm just quoting where we are now and what it looks like. I think it's interesting that the Democrats haven't gained ground, so it looks to me like maybe there's a bit of a lack of enthusiasm on the Republican side or something. What I th- what I think has hurt Trump a little bit here is that he's been so focused on the international side, which has a lot of value because obviously he's trying to bring investments in this country, which will then build plant and facilities and will hire American citizens here over the long term and improve the living conditions and wages of everybody. The thing that the press is screaming about all the time. I mean, first of all, you don't get affordability but prices dropping. They really, except for volatile things like energy and food and things like that, they don't. They just either don't go up or they go up or they go up more. The key thing is to keep wages up with prices, to get the wages growing. And so there's a lot of things going on that should be positive for that in the long run. And I think one thing is we've got over 2 million illegal aliens out of the country since Trump's been in office. I think between the deportations and 1.9 million of voluntary people that took the $1,000 and left, the $1,000 in the airplane ticket that they're offering. And so as these people leave, obviously there'll be more openings for American citizens to have jobs. And while I do agree there's a few illegal aliens that sometime end up managing to vote, that's a effect that occurs in close elections. And basically, as American citizens get better wages and jobs, that should only accrue to Trump's benefit. And I think part of the problem is in the last few weeks, people have been hearing a lot of Democrat lies and propaganda, and hadn't been responded to too much. And now, as of this week, the Republicans are now engaged, I think, on this issue, and they need to be engaged in order to save the election in the next fall, which is about a little over 11 months away. So that's where we're focused on. And the fact that the Democrats really haven't gained and the Republicans have just lost a little momentum for some reason, I think is where we need to get our people back up to, where they need to be. The good news is as we go into next year, of course, the actual benefits of the big, beautiful bill will take effect, and mainly the tax cuts, which, here's the thing about that. On the good side is I think that the typical senior citizen will get the $6,000 senior deduction. That isn't really no tax on Social Security, really, but if you're in a low enough income level, it might turn into that almost the same thing. I think there's increased also standard deduction there. So for seniors, the seniors should have some real benefits that they shall notice in their tax refunds and so forth. So that should be a positive. Then, as far as of course, tipped workers will up to particularly lower paid, like waiters and stuff like waitresses and stuff like that aren't at elite restaurants and so forth. I mean, the ones that are in the elite restaurants are a whole different story. But there'll be $25,000 of income due to tipped income that will be exempt from taxes, and that should be a noticeable improvement for them. And of course, people that are getting paid overtime won't have income taxes on their overtime premium. That extra time and a half that you get in that environment for working overtime, that extra half of your pay that would you get for those hours. So it's not the whole salary. I don't know if it was ever interpreted that way, but even that should be a nice little benefit for people in that situation. However, of course, and then I think that the children, people with families will get child benefits, child tax credit benefits that will be improved. So that will be noticeable for a broad swath of people. Now, I think the downside of this thing is that of course we have preserved otherwise the tax rates that were done under Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, and those have been preserved. But the problem is, from a political point of view, is that okay, it's going to be the same basic tax as this next year as it was last year. And for people that don't have the children, aren't working overtime with, where you get that overtime premium, who aren't tipped workers, who aren't a senior citizen. That group of people probably will notice almost no difference other than the typical inflation adjustment of 2.8%, to the tax bracket. So, I don't know if we're going to get full credit for what we've done here. If in fact Trump had not succeeded in getting this bill through, this whole middle class have been hit with a whopping tax increase. And by the way, unlike the Democrat lie, the upper income people in the top bracket, there was no real change there. They never really, there was no cut for their tax in this bill at all. It's the same as it was before. And in fact, on the benefit side, the other benefit side is people in the high income tax states, your California, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, will get more deduction on their real estate taxes, or state and local taxes, I guess primarily real estate or state income taxes. So that will be a benefit for those people. Of course, the probability of us winning those states is not too great, is it? And in states like Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, and places like that, well, I don't know. That may not have that much of an impact. I don't know. And some people are still, are itemizing. We'll see that benefit. So there are some benefits, but the main tax rates will remain basically the same for the middle class people. So, in fact, for everybody really. So, but they would have had probably about a 20% increase in the income taxes if this bill hadn't have passed. And I don't know if the Democrats were in exactly what they would have done. Would they have just let the Trump's tax cuts expire and blame it on Trump, even though they didn't do anything about it? So you see what I'm getting at there. So but I think all in all, this still bodes positive for things improving in Trump and Republican approval next year. And so that is what we're looking forward here to. And the other thing is, I think that jobs and wages should improve simply as there's less competition with illegal alien labor if we can get these illiterate foreign truck drivers off the road that are crashing into people and get jobs open for American citizens. I'm still amazed that the trucking companies would hire these people, knowing that when they get in an accident, they're going to get hit with some stupendous lawsuits, which at a minimum is probably going to increase their insurance rates. So I don't know how that's going, but I think, again, there's another chance to open up more jobs for voters. And overall, I think already there's more of the employment that's occurred recently has been with American citizens and not with immigrants or illegal immigrants particularly. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the other downside, and here's a real complication, is this whole Obamacare thing. The subsidy for Obamacare, which was jacked up massively during the COVID situation, the COVID panic, you might almost call it. And I think there, I would say that that we got a problem because look at it this way: if you have a dog and it's eating in its bowl, and you want to pick up that bowl and put some other good treats in the bowl for the dog is very likely to bite you rather than thinking it's going to get a treat. And if you're really going to take the food away, it definitely will bite you. And so what I'm thinking is, or at least growl pretty bad. So what I'm getting at is, regardless of whether these people should be getting these benefits or not, they have been for years, and this bill does take some of those away, and that's created a big controversy, which led to the government shutdown and all that sort of thing. And so the problem is how to finesse this. And of course, you have hardline Republicans that don't want to budge an inch, and maybe they don't need to in their district, but we have a very narrow House majority, folks. And I still predict we'll probably lose it no matter what, unfortunately. The question, I think, is how bad. In other words, will we be in a position where in a 2028 presidential race we could win it back again easily? Or will it stay Democrat for many years? And that's the situation we're worried about here. But I tend to think personally that probably the best thing to do at this point would be to extend the subsidies for 1 year only. Now, the Democrats are pushing for 3 years, which would mean it would be to the end of Trump's term, right? See what I'm saying there? So we don't want to do that. So I think the best thing would be to do it for 1 year, or maybe even a half a year. But I'm thinking a year would probably be the easiest to get through. And then the idea would be that next year we'd come back and we'd work on this new health plan they've been talking about, whatever it is, have time to really work out the details, and then basically, do a reconciliation bill to put that in, and then to replace this system, probably beginning next year. And that way people that are on these things would notice no difference until after the next election, and hopefully we've promised something good that will be coming later that maybe not scare them too much. I'm not saying that they're justified in getting all this money. I'm just saying that if you take it away, they're going to vote against you, most of them, and that's the problem. And that the Democrats have set us up on that one, kind of. Now, so that's my thinking, and we'll see what the Republicans do. I just don't think there's time in about half a month, running into the Christmas time and New Year's period, to possibly put together a sensible alternative tax bill and to actually write it up. I mean, it'd be too slapdash, too haphazard, and I think if at the end of the day, if you actually offer them a 1 year extension, probably we can get that through Congress rather than having it expire. I think. We don't know how far the Democrats are going to go on that one, but the 1 year is not as poisonous, and that gives us a chance to fix things. So anyway, that's kind of my view on that thing. I don't like that concession, but I think it's the best thing we can do. See, what's happened is, I've been watching some financial retirement planning videos lately, having to do with some other issues primarily that I'm involved in. But what I'm thinking is that I understand that those subsidies and preserving them is part of the planning that people get into when they're doing things like conversion from 401ks to Roths and things like that, or from standard IRAs to Roths. They're thinking about how they preserve those subsidies in that process, and why they might not do the conversion and so forth. So when I saw that, I'm going, uh-oh, I can see where we're going to have an issue here. So at any rate, that's about my rundown. I'm guardedly optimistic on holding the Senate. Let's hope we do the best we can in the House. Remember, every House seat we save, if we can keep the House, great. But if we can't, if we can minimize the loss, what that gets us in the position to have a rebound in the next election afterwards, the presidential one in 2028. Because, otherwise we could be stuck with a Democrat House for years, and that would be a disaster. So anyhow, that's kind of my viewpoint on the local the political rundown at the moment, I guess you'd say. So I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always. And I'll be have my address of my social media accounts in the description below. I have noticed recently that Parler's alive. I haven't put that down as anything to follow quite yet, but I have posted there. So if you're on that one, you can also follow my videos there. So all for this time.